So that was nice. We got to watch a little bit of football. We got to report on some actual football for a change. Man, it feels like an age since the Club World Cup. But back to the grind. There's transfer news to talk about, so let's go. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And the transfer wheel keeps on turning. We've had a little break because we actually had some football yesterday, but we've got more things to report on. But before I forget, guys, if you are enjoying the content and would like to see more, please do me the distinct honour of liking or sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. So, as per the reports, Garnacho has agreed personal terms with Chelsea. And you don't even need to be a football reporter to know what that is now, do you? It's going to be a 7-year deal, and it's going to be incentive-based wage structure starting at probably like 100 grand a week-ish and going up with better performances and more trophies, Champions League, whatever. Blah, 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 blah. It's the same old story all of the time now, but apparently we are edging closer and closer and closer to Garnacho. So it is time to reconcile any negative thoughts or ideals you might have, I certainly had, about Garnacho joining Chelsea, because it looks like it's going to happen. And as fans, we've just got to throw our support behind him, right? You can sort of see where he's going to fit in the team. So obviously we played Leverkusen last night and Tyreek George started out on the left. And in all honesty, he looked like he really struggled to get a foothold in the game, right? It was not his best showing. So Tyreek George did play a significant role last season. He was one of the de facto impromptu strikers when all of our strikers were injured. And you got to respect him, man. An 18, 19-year-old kid being asked to play a really unfamiliar role in high-profile games. Like, fair play to him. He kind of just got on and did it. But he just didn't look that good yesterday, man. He was definitely, like I say, just really struggling to get a foothold in the game. There are a couple of reasons that might be the case. Obviously, Esteval Willian was taking all of the attention, the plaudits, and a lot of the ball, do you know what I mean? But as soon as Jamie Gittins came on, things just instantly looked different, didn't they? Is that genuinely something like, the players were just passing to Gittins more and they were giving Gittins more opportunities? Or was there something there to say that he was making those things happen for himself? When he was getting the ball, he was dribbling past 2-3 players at a time, do you know what I mean? It was amazing. And that's the kind of impact you want from a player, especially like, you know, a brand new signing like Jamie Gittins and stuff. So Garnacho and Jamie Gittins are both byline wingers, but they play very, very, very slightly different roles and have very slightly different strengths. Jamie Gittins is definitely particularly adept at taking on his man, right? You know, dribbling past players and trying to get into the box and stuff. And he's a really, really good wingery winger. Garnacho is, I would argue, based on the stats I threw together when I did my Who's the Better Baller featuring Jamie Gittins and Garnacho, go and check that video out if you haven't already. Garnacho had much more like shot creating actions per 90 and seemed to be getting himself into more scoring positions, whereas Jamie Gittins, although to be fair, Jamie Gittins actually scored more goals last season than Garnacho did, but Bundesliga, Premier League, Man United finishing 15th. Do you know what I mean? There are potentially some nuanced factors that can play into that one. But yeah, ultimately, Garnacho offers a different kind of threat. So the way Maresca's building his squad now, think for the attacking options more so than the defensive or the midfield options. The attacking options, he wants to have different options to play with. So, for instance, Pedro Neto and Esteval Willian, both quite different types of wingers, right? João Pedro and Liam Delap are night and day in terms of centre forwards. They offer completely different things. Xavi Simons, if we get him, and Cole Palmer, again, both very different types of centre attacking midfielders. And if we end up getting Garnacho, then him and Jamie Gittins, not exactly chalk and cheese, but ultimately do really offer different roles as well. So if the news is to be believed, it does seem that Maresca is trying to build his attack around having different options rather than just having kind of two versions of the same team. So, like I said, it's interesting. This seems to be a lot more with the attack than it does with the defence, because Jarrell Hato looks like the perfect Mark Cucurella replacement. In the Leverkusen game last night, I was watching it on Channel 5, and one of the pundits kept talking about how Dario Asugo seemed a lot like Moises Caicedo, right? And we heard it in the Club World Cup that, you know, Maresca come out and said, I see Andre Santos playing a very, very similar role to Enzo Fernandez, for instance. So I guess you could argue that Malagusto and Reece James are quite different, but ultimately can as well. They're both that midfielder, right back, invert hybrid, aren't they? So I think from the back line and the base of the midfield, Maresca seems to be trying to put something together where, that's foundational, and that's kind of always going to be the case. But for the attack, it seems like he's trying to set up 4 different situations, right? Like, for instance, we changed our tactics in the PSG game, didn't we? That just happened. Like, we definitely played a very different type of game to what we normally play. But in other situations, like against a low block, a high-pressing team, or a really strong possession-dominant team, we're going to be looking for, okay, we need players that can press. All right, we need someone who can drop deep and unlock a defence. And, in some situations, you're going to want a Jamie Gittins who can leg it up that byline and, try and take people on. And in some situations, you're going to want someone like Garnacho who could probably more likely to create a scoring chance himself if they seem weak on that particular side. So tactically, it does make sense. Do you know what I mean? It does make sense. At the end of the day, if Garnacho is going to come in for a reasonable price, which I still always maintain, anything less than 40 million is fine. Anything more than 40 million, then we're just getting robbed at that point. It makes sense. And the other thing I pointed out, I think it was in my video yesterday actually, do we have time to develop Tyreek George when we're going to definitely want to win some sort of trophy this season, push as absolutely as far as we can in the Premier League and absolutely as far as we can in the Champions League? This isn't like last season where we had the Conference League and we had an A team and a B team. It's not going to be like that this time. We're not going to have, Conference League and low-level cup games, outgo the kids and the afterthoughts. Do you know what I mean? It's going to be a case of, we need to win all of these games. So I need a strong 11 for this one, but I've got a game 3 days later and I'm going to need a strong 11 for that one as well. This one is going to be a low block game, so I'm going to put this guy, and this guy on. These guys are going to come at us and try and play more attacking football, so I'm going to want this guy, and this guy on to try and take advantage of the space that they're going to create. Does Tyreek George fit into that mould? I think he did admirably last season, do you know what I mean? And I've mentioned it in one of my other videos as well. I don't necessarily hate the idea of selling Tyreek George to a club that we can cozy up with, maybe a Strasbourg or, a Red Bull Leipzig, who are big in that multi-club thing as well. I'm sure that we're trying to make friends with them, with some potential buyback clause, and we sell him for 15, 20 mil, make a little chunk of change on him. I mean, 20 mil would actually be wicked for Tyreek George, wouldn't it? But, 10, 15 mil, let's call it. Make a little chunk of change on him, put that buyback clause in there. He goes out and has more room to develop in a slightly less pressurized environment. One or two things happens there. He either becomes that guy or he doesn't become that guy. And we got some money for him. And at the end of the day, if he becomes that guy, we buy him back cheap. If he doesn't, then it was just the right thing to do, wasn't it? So getting away from the Garnacho stuff a little bit, but just as to, to bring it right back round, as to why I can see us going in for someone like Garnacho, it shows ambition, right? It shows ambition. And if there's one thing that we have argued about a lot, not necessarily argued as a fan base, but one thing we've kind of been at odds with the new structure about, has been bringing in all of these really young players that are never going to make the first team, and we need to show ambition and buy players like we want to win trophies. At the end of the day, Garnacho isn't going to move the needle, but it is showing that we're looking to strengthen an area of strength, right? At the end of the day, it's kind of inarguable that as of right now, Garnacho's better than Tyreek George, isn't he? I would love to see Tyreek George develop in a Chelsea shirt, but when you see someone like Esteval Willian come in yesterday at 18 years old and just look unbelievable, all right, okay, yes, he's 18, but look at what he can do on a football pitch. Look at the relationship he's already developing with the players around him. Tyreek George hasn't quite reached that yet, and he's had a lot more experience in our team. So we've just got to, right now, we're not just buying a youngster, do you know what I mean? Because we think we can do something with him one day. At the end of the day, Maresca wants 2 byline wingers. At the start of last season, he thought he had 2 because we had Mykhailo Mudryk and Jadon Sancho. So as far as Maresca was concerned, he was starting the season with 2 strong-ish byline wingers. Obviously, the Mudryk thing was the Mudryk thing, and that was just a nightmare, wasn't it? And Jadon Sancho ended up flattering to deceive, do you know what I mean? So we ended up cobbling together our left wing, and Tyreek George got a lot more opportunities because of that, but we were throwing Noni Madueke out there, we were throwing Pedro Neto over there as well, and that is not how Maresca wants to play football. So Maresca did really well to say that our left wing was almost like a dead spot for like a really long time last season. Do you know what I mean? In the Club World Cup, we were even putting Cole Palmer out there. It was just so like, oh, what do I do with the left wing in this game? And Maresca wants to go into this season having strong options for that side. Look, Jamie Gittins looks wicked already. Whatever happens, Jamie Gittins is going to, from the beginning of the season at least, barring injury or anything crazy, Jamie Gittins looks like he's going to be the man to take the left-hand side. If we bring Garnacho in, Garnacho will more likely push Jamie Gittins than Tyreek George will. So this is mad amounts of copium, right? It's literally so much copium from me trying to get on board with the fact that we're going to bring Garnacho in because, you know, there's been the attitude stuff and with this, that and the other. I don't know what it is, man. I don't know what it is, but I'm not the only one. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of Chelsea fans out there that aren't really keen on bringing Garnacho in, but having to justify it to myself, I can see why. Do you know what I mean? I can see why. We'll have two strong byline wingers. At the end of the day, if Garnacho doesn't perform, he'll get sold. We'll make the same money back that we bought him for at the very least because we've got excellent negotiators and we're not going to pay a huge amount for him or put him on a ridiculous deal. So we're not going to lock ourselves in this corner, back ourselves into this corner where we can't do anything with him and whatever. Do you know what I mean? So that's my 2 cents on the Garnacho situation. I absolutely think that it's going to happen and let's just get on board with it, man. So, goalkeeper news, right? Goalkeeper news. Not actually necessarily something we've strongly been credited with, but it's something I've seen for the last couple of weeks floating around, and I do just keep seeing it. It is about Gigi Donnarumma. Gianluigi Donnarumma, PSG's superstar goalkeeper, right? So, really interesting one, and I don't think this is going to happen. And there is lots of reasons why. So what is happening with Gigi Donnarumma at the moment is he's getting towards the end of his contract at PSG. He just won everything with him last season, man. Do you know what I mean? So he's in fairly good stead with them as far as the playing perspective goes. But PSG are taking notes from Blueco about how things are working. And this is interesting because there's already parallels between PSG and Chelsea at the moment. They're both putting together very young teams. Obviously, with, you know, they've got an amazing manager in Luis Enrique, and Enzo Maresca is definitely a few rungs below the ladder of that, but they're looking to play similar types of football. They've got that Barcelona-coded DNA in the foundation of their managerial philosophy. And now PSG are taking note from Blueco about the wage structure, right? Because basically PSG's new technical director, sorry, I'm not sure if he's new, but PSG's current technical director anyway, are looking to change the wage structure at PSG to change it to what we're doing with lower base contracts and more incentive-based payouts based on performance and stuff, right? So Gigi Donnarumma is on 200k a week in pounds, do you know what I mean? So it's probably like 250,000 euros a week. And he's on quite chunky incentives already, do you know what I mean? But because he's obviously negotiating a new contract now, they don't want to just pump up his wage as is. They want to say, right, we're going to bring it down, but if you do this, you can earn this much, and if you can do this, you can earn this much. He is not happy about that at all. And it's kind of understandable, right? Gigi Donnarumma has been playing first-team European football with big sides since he was 16 years old with AC Milan. He's now like 27. Do you know what I mean? He's got over a decade at the top flight. He's just won the Champions League. He is arguably one of the better goalkeepers in the world. Do you know what I mean? Maybe not quite top 5, maybe top 5. If you have an opinion about that, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to know what you think. But yeah, so Donnarumma is not a fan of this new wage structure, right? And what you keep seeing in the news is Man United and Chelsea are circling, you know, like sharks to to keep an eye on Donnarumma's situation. So I just don't think it will happen based on the fact that, yes, it would be great to have a goalkeeper like Donnarumma in tow because he's very, very experienced. He's very, very confident. And arguably, well, not even arguably, he's better than Sanchez and Jorgensen, isn't he? He is clearly, several rungs above the two goalkeepers that we already have. But Chelsea aren't going to go in and break their wage structure and pay Donnarumma 300 grand a week. It's just not going to happen. So there's the thing about the wage structure, but also Luis Enrique supposedly isn't very happy about how he plays with his feet. Luis Enrique would like a more footballer, I've just created an adjective there, footballer type of goalkeeper, right? In the mould of an Alisson or an Edison or someone like that, playing with his feet, connecting it together, being an auxiliary centre-back and, you know, all those sorts of things. He is, you know, Donnarumma is a shot stopper at the end of the day. He's a really, really, really good shot stopper. and he's won them the Champions League. So he's definitely got, like I say, some credit in the bank. But he's not happy about the wage thing, and he's not very good with his feet. So why would Chelsea go out of their way to pay, it's going to be 40, 50 mil, even if he's only got a few years left on his contract, but ultimately you're going to be bringing him in on 300 grand a week. And also you're going to be bringing him in on 300 grand a week to not be your ideal archetype for a goalkeeper that you're looking for. The reason we just sold Petrovic was because he's not very good at playing with his feet. Do you know what I mean? The reason we bought in Philip Jorgensen for £20 million when we did was because apparently he can play with his feet. I think that, and this is sort of like speaking to me about the goalkeeper thing at the moment, I think the reason we're not really heavily going in for a goalkeeper is because as of right now, there's no one super available that matches the archetype that we're looking for. And I guess they just think we're going to be better off trying to develop someone than go and spend a load of money on a goalkeeper that ultimately isn't going to play the football that we want. Robert Sanchez is okay with his feet. Again, what does that mean, man? What does that mean? I need to look into the stats on that, really. But ultimately, as far as the Donnarumma news goes, I don't see it happening. I don't see us breaking the wage structure and paying like a huge, massive sum of money every single week, like 300k a week, to Gigi Donnarumma on a long term. You know what? If it was a 1 or 2 year deal, all right, okay, maybe let's have a chat about that. But that's not going to happen, is it? He's not going to do that. He's going to want to make sure that he's locking himself down for the next 5 or 6 years. I could see Donnarumma being another casualty of the Saudi Pro League, if I'm being completely honest. I think it's just going to happen more and more because, you know, I think the world is going to change. I think obviously we're starting to do it. PSG are starting to do it. Man United need to start doing it. Do you know what I mean? Because one of Man United's problems, you know, there's been a report come out recently about how they just hemorrhaging money, man, absolutely hemorrhaging money, and it's not sustainable. Teams are going to start getting younger, and they're going to start, well, they've already started, but I think more en masse, they're going to start being these more kind of like incentive-based structural wage packets. It's just going to happen, and players like Gigi Donnarumma, players like Raheem Sterling, players like Ben Chilwell, do you know what I mean? These players that have had really good peaks but aren't wanted by their teams anymore and are on this absolutely massive buck. There's nowhere else for them to go unless they lower their wage demands, do you know what I mean? And why would you do that as a professional? Unless you really, 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 really cared more about playing football than you did about money. And don't get me wrong, like, all of these guys love playing football, but when you're getting paid 300 grand a week and someone says, I want you to knock £100,000 a week off of your wage, they're being like, nah, mate, I'm not going to do that, am I? I'm just going to keep getting paid. Footballers have short careers, do you know what I mean? And I do not resent any footballer for not wanting to bring their wage down when they're on generational money of 300 grand a week, to even 200 grand a week, do you know what I mean? So it just kind of makes sense, man. Like, for me, it just kind of makes sense. But I don't see Donnarumma coming to Chelsea for these reasons. Do you know what I mean? I think he's going to be too expensive for someone who doesn't actually match the profile, the archetype of the kind of goalkeeper that we're looking for. It just doesn't seem to make much sense to me. Right, I'm just going to wrap up the video with a couple of other little tidbits, because you know me, I love the tidbits, right? The little digestible pieces of news that we don't have to go super into. So, after the game yesterday, Maresca came out and said it is a priority for him to get another centre-back. And this is counter to what we saw literally like within half an hour of 40 minutes of the news dropping about Levi Colwill having his obviously ACL injury. Fabrizio Romano posted another tweet that was a quote from someone at Chelsea saying, Chelsea are happy with the centre-backs they've got. They're not looking to go into the market. Enzo Maresca has come out and been like, nah, mate, I want another centre-back. And that makes sense, doesn't it? Like I say, profile-wise, I've seen links continue with Renato Vega. So although I actually kind of ship that as, you know, he's definitely worth a shot because he's so young, it's already that kind of profile, they are maybe still looking at selling Renato Vega. Do you know what I mean? So especially if we do sell Renato Vega, we're going to have to go in for someone else. Achiampong, as we saw yesterday, looks ready for a bigger role this season, but is he ready to feature that much in this? You know, I just went on this whole spiel about how Tyreek George isn't ready. I would argue Achiampong is further along his journey than Tyreek George is, and he's ready to play more football for Chelsea, but I don't think he's ready to have all of that pressure put on him to be one of those guys next year. Jarrell Hato, as we saw yesterday, I know a lot of people are saying we've got Jarrell Hato, he can play that role. And I'm like, yes, but you didn't buy Jarrell Hato to play centre-back for us for an entire season. Do you know what I mean? We bought Jarrell Hato to essentially be the heir/successor to Marc Cucurella and provide adequate backup for him for the time being. And you saw why yesterday. Jarrell Hato looks really, really good in that position, that left-back, inverted midfield, attacking, creative kind of role. Do you know what I mean? It really, really suits him. He will have to fall into that left centre-back role as part of his left-back role, which I think is about as far as that's going to go. But I think we'd be much better off getting another centre-back than we would just putting all that pressure on Jarrell Hato. Do you know what I mean? And if we're not going to keep Renato Vega, then I see something like a bid for a Mark Gahey or someone else coming in soon. Do you know what I mean? So that's just an interesting one. Maresca is at odds with the news that, you know, that came out just after Carwell's injury of Chelsea saying, we're not going to go in for anyone else. We're happy with everyone. Maresca's like, nah, mate, no, give me another centre-back, please. Little bit about Christopher Nkunku. Supposedly, Inter Milan have been credited with interest in him. That'd be a good move. Definitely, I can see him doing really well there. They play like a 3-5-2, don't they? And they did last time I checked. Maybe that's changed since. You know, it was always Lautaro and someone else up front. Christopher Nkunku's best performance ever has come from a shadow striker in a front two. He definitely does really well in that position where he doesn't have to be the number nine, and he can drop deep and stuff, but he has license to get forward and score goals. You know, if he's in a system that is supported by a robust midfield and creative attacking wing-backs, then I think that would actually suit him really, really well. He wasn't at the game yesterday, I saw, so I'm not even sure if he was in attendance. Obviously, he wasn't in the squad, along with the likes of Nicholas Jackson and a few other guys, do you know what I mean? That we're looking on set, that we're definitely looking at selling on. But yeah, so Inter Milan interested in Christopher Nkunku. Is the money going to be a problem? I think Christopher Nkunku would suit Inter Milan if they're still playing that formation, because like I say, Nkunku's best season ever was Red Bull Leipzig, playing in that shadow striker when they were playing a front two. And the last one's great, man. I desperately hope this happens because the scenes, man, just the absolute scenes. So supposedly, it's about Raheem Sterling, by the way. Supposedly, Raheem Sterling is attracting interest from Sunderland. I love that. They are going for it, man. They bought a Strasbourg midfielder for 30 mil. They've got Granit Xhaka in. They've just signed Mark Gui on loan. Mate, take him, have him, man. Oh, mate, if you know, we need to figure the wage thing out. We don't really know what's going on with that yet, do we, to be honest? I haven't seen anything about, well, maybe I saw once somewhere that Sterling's willing to lower his wage demand so he can go and play football. Supposedly he wants to stay in London is the big thing. So all of the teams that we've seen him linked to are West Ham, Crystal Palace, Fulham, Brentford, do you know what I mean? All of these guys. But, you know, I don't think they're willing to make that splash. But Sunderland, it's literally the other end of the country. But I would love to see that, man. I'm really enjoying watching Sunderland's ambition for wanting to stay up and their first time back in the Premier League for ages. And they are just going for it, man. And it's like Nottingham Forest, isn't it? But a little bit different. Like Nottingham Forest did something different. They bought like 20 plus players when they came back into the Premier League. Sunderland are just going in for quality. Do you know what I mean? They're like, we are just going to build a team of winners. And the thing is, Sunderland is a big club with a big history and a massive fan base, do you know what I mean? So they can probably afford to take this kind of risk. And it is a risk because if they get relegated at the first time of asking, they're going to struggle a little bit because, a lot of these purchases and these wage things are going to drain them if they don't stay in the Premier League and carry on making that money. But no, I love this, man. Sterling to Sunderland, I ship it. I absolutely ship it. I'm really excited to see Sunderland next season, man, because we've got Burnley. Burnley I'm always very interested in because my best mate's a Burnley fan. And now they've just bought 2 Chelsea players in Armando Broja and Leslie Ugochukwu. They've got Kyle Walker. They've been credited with interest in Ben Chilwell. So there's a kind of a Premier League kind of thing in their team now. They're buying like Premier League ready players, and and just because it's my mate's team, man, I love watching Burnley. Leeds. Don't know too much about Leeds. I know Daniel Farke's the manager, and he's never been very good at staying in the Premier League, but we'll see what happens. There was a load of noise about him sacking him at some point, and they've kept him on. So Leeds, I'm not 100% sure. And Sunderland are just going for the jugular in the transfer market, man. And I think they're putting together a really, really good, experienced team. I'll have to dive into the rest of their team a little bit because I don't exactly know what else they've got going for them. But Sterling to Sunderland, yes, I ship it and I would love to see it. Right, guys, that is the end of the video, but thank you so much for sticking around. Like I say, if you are new to the channel, please smash that like button, hit me a subscribe. I'm bringing daily Chelsea content at the moment. The channel is growing fast and I want all of you to be a part of it. Nice one, guys. I hope you have a wicked day and I will catch up with you very, very soon. Peace.